I'm terribly surprised and I'm terribly grateful to the Academy, and I'd just like to thank everyone, and I'd like to thank my two families, the Waltons and the Thomases. Thank you very, very much.
A cast member walked off one of the most beloved family shows in American television history, and the network almost couldn't explain why to the audience without giving away something far more complicated than a simple career move. For 9 seasons, the Waltons told America a story about a family that never broke, no matter how hard the world pressed against it. Behind that story, almost every actor who wore the Walton name eventually had to walk away, some for reasons the show could write into a script, and some for reasons no writer's room could ever put on screen. This is the story of why they really left, and what staying or leaving actually cost them. When the Waltons premiered in the fall of 1972, nobody expected a slow, gentle drama about a Depression-era family in rural Virginia to become appointment television. It did. The show climbed to the top of the Nielsen ratings, won the Emmy for Outstanding Drama Series, and turned its cast into some of the most recognizable faces in the country. Earl Hamner Jr., who created the series from memories of his own upbringing in Schuyler, Virginia, had built something that felt less like entertainment and more like a national ritual. Millions of viewers tuned in every week to watch the lights go out across the Walton farmhouse and to hear the family call goodnight to one another in the dark. It became shorthand for everything comforting about American family life. But the comfort on screen rarely matched what was happening off it. Richard Thomas was only 21 when he became John Boy Walton, the eldest son, an aspiring writer whose narration guided the audience through the family's hardships. He won a Primetime Emmy within a year of the show's debut and quickly became one of the most recognized young actors on American television. Yet the very success that made him a star also made him anxious. Thomas had trained as a stage actor at Columbia University, and as he watched contemporaries build film careers that felt entirely out of reach for a weekly television performer, he began to worry that John Boy was hardening into the only role audiences would ever associate with him. By the close of the 5th season in 1977, he made the decision to leave, and the writers sent John Boy off to New York to pursue his writing ambitions, a departure that fit naturally into the character's arc and left the door open for his return. Thomas did not walk into the film career he had imagined. He found steady, respectable work on Broadway and in television movies, but nothing matched the cultural weight of John Boy Walton. The producers, faced with an unresolved storyline, eventually recast the role for the final 2 seasons with actor Robert Whiteman, a capable performer who nonetheless could not fully restore what audiences had lost. In later interviews, Thomas has spoken candidly about the perspective time gave him, admitting that he had underestimated what the show actually offered him while he was still living inside it. He returned for the reunion films that followed in the 1980s, and the role that once felt like a ceiling eventually became something he recognized as the foundation his entire career had been built on. Michael Ern's departure came from an entirely different place. She joined the series in 1972 as Olivia Walton, the mother whose quiet strength anchored the family, and her performance earned her 4 Primetime Emmy Awards across the show's run, an extraordinary run of recognition for a single character on a single series. After season 7, she left anyway. Learn has been open in interviews over the years about the reason, and it has nothing to do with resentment toward the material or her castmates, whom she has continued to speak about warmly for decades. She was simply exhausted. 9 to 10 months of production every year for 7 consecutive seasons had worn her down in a way no accolade could offset. She wanted a life that existed outside a shooting schedule, the ability to choose her next project rather than being permanently tied to one. The writers gave Olivia tuberculosis, sending her to a sanitarium for treatment, a plot device that preserved the character's dignity while explaining her absence and leaving room for Learn's eventual return. She did come back for later episodes and reunion films, but the specific emotional weight Olivia had carried as the family's moral center never fully redistributed to the rest of the cast in her absence. Something about the show's texture changed once she stepped away, and longtime viewers noticed. Before Michael Learned ever appeared on the Walton set, the role of Olivia had already been cast, and the story of who almost played that mother is one of the more remarkable footnotes in television history. Patricia Neal, An Academy Award winner for her performance in HUD in 1963 was Earl Hamner Jr.'s original choice for Olivia Walton. He believed she had exactly the grounded, weathered strength the character demanded. But 7 years before the show began casting, in February of 1965, Neal suffered 3 massive strokes while pregnant with her 5th child. She was 39 years old. The strokes left her partially paralyzed and significantly affected her speech, and her recovery, aided by an unconventional and demanding rehabilitation program overseen by her husband, the writer Roald Dahl, was later described by the medical professionals who tracked her case as remarkable. She returned to acting and earned another Academy Award nomination for The Subject Was Roses in 1968, proving her talent had survived what her body had endured. But by 1972, the physical demands of a weekly television drama, the pace, the volume of dialogue, the relentless production calendar, were more than her health could reasonably support, and she withdrew before filming began. Michael Learned was brought in to replace her, and the show that generations of viewers came to know was, in a very real sense, shaped by a medical catastrophe that had nearly taken Patricia Neal's life years before a single scene was filmed. Long career as a chistery that almost none of his television audience knew about while they watched him each week. Geer had been a prominent actor and left-wing activist since the 1930s, a close friend of the folk singer Woody Guthrie, and an active participant in labor organizing during an era when that kind of involvement carried genuine professional risk. When the House Un-American Activities Commit Ellen Corby, who played Grandma Esther Walton opposite Geer, had already built a investigated communist influence in Will Geer, who played Grandpa Zebulon Walton from the very first episode, carried to Hollywood in the late 1940s, Geer's name surfaced prominently, and in 1951 he was called to testify. He refused to cooperate, and the consequence was immediate. He was blacklisted, effectively shut out of film and television for more than a decade, forced to find work wherever he could, in small theaters and community productions, while the industry he had helped build pretended he no longer existed. The blacklist began loosening in the 1960s, and by the time the Waltons cast him as Grandpa Zeb in 1972, Geer was in his late 60s and had lived through an ordeal that tested the very values of resilience and community the show was built to celebrate. He continued in the role through the end of season 5, but he did not live to see the show's later years. Geer died on April 22, 1978, at 76, during the show's production period, and the series chose to let Grandpa Walton die between seasons rather than force a manufactured farewell for an actor who had not survived long enough to film one. Michael Learned later described the sense of loss the remaining cast carried into every scene they filmed afterward. A actor-actress before joining the show, including an Academy Award nomination for I Remember Mama in 1948. She won 3 Primetime Emmy Awards for her portrayal of Grandma Walton in 1973, 1976, and 1977, a level of sustained recognition that reflected just how precisely she had built the character. Then, in November of 1976, during production on Season 5, Corby suffered a severe stroke at the age of 66. It significantly affected her speech and mobility, and her return to a demanding weekly production schedule was genuinely uncertain. Rather than quietly recasting the role, the show's creators made the unusually thoughtful decision to write the stroke directly into the storyline, allowing the Walton family's on-screen response to mirror the real uncertainty surrounding Corby's recovery. She returned beginning with Season 7, her appearances reduced but her presence intact, and she continued on the show through its final seasons and into the reunion films of the 1980s. The decision to acknowledge her condition rather than conceal it aligned the show's real behavior with the values it broadcast every week, a small act of integrity that did not happen automatically. Someone behind the scenes chose that path deliberately. Cammie Cotler played Elizabeth Walton, the youngest of the 7 children, across the entire 9-season run, growing up almost entirely in front of a national audience. She was 6 years old when the show began and 15 when it ended, meaning her actual childhood unfolded alongside a fictional one, shaped by production schedules and public attention that most children never have to navigate. Unlike many child actors who struggled to separate from the industry that raised them, Cotler made a clean and deliberate exit. After the series ended in 1981, she did not pursue further acting roles. She went to college, pursued education with the same seriousness her castmates applied to their next projects, and eventually became a teacher. In later interviews, she has spoken about that choice with striking clarity and no visible ambivalence, describing an industry that simply did not represent the adult life she wanted to build. Her story stands out precisely because it is uncomplicated, a clean transition rather than a fade or a failed comeback. John Walmsley, who played Jason Walton for all 9 seasons, brought real musical training to a character defined by his connection to music, and that detail was never accidental. Walmsley had genuine ambitions as a musician that existed independently of his acting career, ambitions the demands of 9 months of annual production made difficult to pursue fully. He stayed through the entire run of the show, never leaving early the way Richard Thomas had, but once the series ended in 1981, his path revealed where his real investment had always been. He moved toward music composition and production rather than continuing to chase acting roles, building a post-show career that had far more to do with what genuinely interested him than with the industry that had made him famous. His trajectory reads less like an exit and more like a return to something that had been waiting patiently the whole time. Ralph Waite, who played the family patriarch John Walton Sr. across all 9 seasons, carried private struggles that had nothing to do with the scripts he was handed. He managed alcohol dependency during portions of the production, a reality he became more publicly candid about in later years, long after the cameras had stopped rolling. Showing up week after week to embody steadiness and reliability while privately fighting something significant required a different kind of discipline than anything written into the story. Waite stayed through the entire series and later became an ordained minister, and the quiet religious thread that had always run through the Walton family's fictional life seemed to take on deeper personal meaning for him afterward. He continued working in television and film and remained connected to the show's legacy through reunion productions until his death in 2014 at the age of 85. The younger cast members carried burdens of their own kind. Mary McDonough, who played Erin Walton across all 9 seasons, has spoken in later years about the body image pressures she experienced as a young actress on a show that was specifically built around wholesome American family imagery, pressures that led to